She chose the golden boy over me, this slacker. Now she begs for a second chance. They called him the slacker. Ethan Evans, the boy who always showed up late, half awake, hair messy like he just rolled out of bed. He sat by the window in the last row, staring outside while everyone else scribbled notes. To them he was a joke, another boy without direction wasting his youth. But no one knew that before coming to school, Ethan worked a morning shift at the small mechanics shop downtown. No one knew he woke before dawn to fix cars and save enough to help his mother pay rent. They never saw the exhaustion in his eyes or the oil stains on his fingers that no amount of scrubbing could wash away. To the world he was lazy. To himself he was simply tired. That morning, like every other, Ethan ran through the crowded hallway, clutching his worn-out backpack. Laughter echoed behind him. Someone shouted, "Late again, Evans?" He didn't look back, he'd gotten used to it. But then he heard a different laugh. Softer. Warmer. Lena Cho. The golden girl. Perfect smile, perfect grades, perfect boyfriend. She was walking beside Ryan, the school's golden boy. The star athlete, the kind everyone's parents adored. Together they looked like something out of a glossy magazine. The couple everyone envied. Ryan noticed Ethan passing by and smirked. "Morning, slacker. What's it like sleeping through life?" Ethan didn't stop. He just smiled faintly. "You should try it sometime. Might help your ego." Ryan's friends burst into laughter, and for a second Ethan could have sworn Lena's lips twitched, like she wanted to smile but didn't dare. When their eyes met, it was brief. But in that glance, something unspoken passed between them, something that didn't belong in a hallway full of noise. The first time Lena really spoke to him was in detention. Ethan had forgotten to submit a project and was assigned an hour after class. He didn't care. Detention was quiet, the one place where the world left him alone. He sat by the window, sketching in his notebook, pencil gliding effortlessly. He was halfway through drawing the old train station, the one his father used to take him to before disappearing one winter, when the door opened. Lena stepped in. Her presence felt too bright for that dull classroom. She hesitated, then took a seat 2 rows behind him. When the teacher stepped out to answer a call, the room fell silent, just the sound of his pencil scratching against the paper. "You're really good," she said softly. Ethan turned, surprised. "It's nothing." She shook her head. "No, really. That's beautiful. The old station, right? I pass it every day." He looked down at the sketch, unsure how to react. "Yeah. My dad used to take me there." He said the trains reminded him that no matter how far you go, there's always a way back. Lena smiled gently. "That's poetic." He chuckled. "Guess I inherited the wrong genes then." She leaned forward, whispering like she was afraid someone might hear. "Maybe not. Maybe people just don't see what's real." That sentence lingered with him long after she left. For the first time in a long while, someone had looked at him, really looked, and didn't see a slacker. After that day they started crossing paths more often. In the library. At the back of the art room. Sometimes under the oak tree behind the school, where Lena liked to eat her lunch away from the crowds. She would ask him about his drawings and he would ask her about her dreams. Lena confessed that even though her life seemed perfect, she often felt trapped. "My parents expect straight A's. Ryan expects me to smile all the time. I can't even breathe without worrying about disappointing someone." Ethan understood. Maybe that was why she found comfort in him, because he expected nothing. They shared quiet moments, laughter over shared secrets, hands brushing when she passed him her coffee, glances that lasted too long to be accidental. Sometimes, when the sun began to set and the school emptied out, she would watch him sketch the dying light through the window and whisper, "You see the world differently." He would smile, not realizing that she had started seeing him differently too. But perfection always notices cracks. One afternoon, Ryan caught her talking to Ethan behind the gym. His expression darkened. "Why are you talking to him?" he demanded. "He's a loser, Lena. He'll never be anything. You're better than that." Lena froze. She looked at Ethan, who stood silent, the hurt hidden behind calm eyes. "He's just a friend," she said finally. Ryan scoffed. "Then pick better friends." He grabbed her hand and walked away, and for the first time Ethan saw it, the invisible chain around her wrist. That night, Ethan sat in his small room, staring at the sketchbook that once felt like escape. His phone buzzed once, a message from Lena. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I can't do this anymore. Please don't hate me." He stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then he closed the phone and turned off the light. Outside, the night hummed softly, indifferent to the quiet breaking of a boy's heart. And for the first time since his father left, Ethan felt truly alone again. "They call me a slacker. Maybe they were right. Because when you're tired of losing everything, you stop trying to hold on. The weeks that followed felt different. The whispers had started, quiet at first like the rustle of wind through dry leaves. But in high school, rumors never stayed whispers for long. Did you see Lena with Ethan again? Ryan's gonna lose it. Why would she even talk to him? Ethan could feel the stares when he walked through the halls. The looks weren't new, but this time they weren't just mocking him. They were mocking her too. And that was when she began to pull away. At first, it was little things. She stopped waiting for him at the library. Her texts came slower, shorter, the warmth fading between the lines. She smiled less when he passed her in the hall. Ethan told himself it was just school stress, exams, or Ryan's jealousy. He wanted to believe it wasn't about him. But deep down he knew. One afternoon he waited under the oak tree behind the school, the place that used to belong to just them. The late sun painted everything gold and the wind whispered through the leaves. He waited. And waited. Lena never came. That night he sat on his bed, sketchbook open, pencil still in his hand but unmoving. His phone buzzed once. Ethan. I can't keep doing this. Ryan found out and things are getting bad. My parents, they wouldn't understand. I'm sorry. He stared at the message for a long time before replying with just one word. Okay. It was all he could manage. Because if he said more he'd break. The next day he saw her again, laughing beside Ryan in the courtyard. She looked radiant, untouched by sadness. Maybe it was all in his head, he thought. Maybe she really was fine. But when her eyes found his for a fleeting second, she froze. Just for a heartbeat. And that was enough for him to know that she wasn't fine at all. That her smile had become armor. Ryan draped his arm around her shoulders possessively. Come on, babe, he said loud enough for Ethan to hear. You don't need to waste your time on nobodies. Ethan turned and walked away without a word. Sometimes silence hurts more than words ever could. The weeks blurred into one another. School ended, summer came, and everyone moved on, except Ethan. He spent his evenings working longer shifts, fixing cars until midnight, hands raw from grease and metal. His mother worried, but he told her he was fine. He wasn't. Everywhere he looked, something reminded him of her. A song on the radio, the smell of vanilla perfume someone wore at the shop, even the train station he once drew for her. One evening he walked there again, the old, abandoned station at the edge of town. The setting sun poured through the broken glass, turning the dust into glitter. He sat on a bench, sketchbook on his lap, and began to draw, not the station this time, but her. Lena. Her hair caught by the wind, her smile soft and unsure, the way she used to look at him when no one else was watching. By the time he finished, the sky had turned dark. The only sound was the faint echo of a passing train, distant, lonely. He tore the page out, folded it carefully, and tucked it inside his jacket pocket. He didn't know why, maybe part of him still hoped she'd come back. But she didn't. When graduation came, Ethan skipped the ceremony. He didn't want to see her walk the stage beside Ryan, perfect, smiling, untouchable. Instead, he worked another shift at the garage, wiping sweat from his brow, pretending he didn't care. That night, he looked at his reflection in the dusty shop mirror, a boy with tired eyes and grease-stained hands. He didn't recognize himself anymore. It's strange how someone can make you feel seen, and then vanish, leaving you invisible again. A few days later, Ethan received a letter in the mail, a college rejection. He wasn't surprised. Between work, school, and exhaustion, he hadn't even applied properly. He sat on the steps outside his house, holding the letter. For a moment he thought about what Lena had said that day in detention. You should show people your art. He laughed bitterly. Who'd care? He muttered to himself. But inside, something small and stubborn refused to die, the echo of her belief in him buried under all that hurt. When summer ended, Lena and Ryan left town for university. Ethan stayed behind, working full-time at the mechanic's shop. The days grew shorter, colder. Life became a loop of grease, noise, and silence. Sometimes he still checked his phone. Sometimes he still hoped. But hope, like everything else, eventually fades. And just like that, she was gone. The girl who once saw beauty in my broken places chose someone shiny, golden. Someone who fit the picture. And I went back to being the slacker everyone said I was. But I didn't know then that losing her would be the fire that changed everything. When Lena left, it felt like the world had turned gray. The laughter that used to fill the halls of school was replaced by the hum of engines, the hiss of steam, and the smell of oil. Ethan traded his textbooks for tools, his sketchbook for a wrench. The days blurred together, a rhythm of work, exhaustion, and quiet nights staring at the same ceiling. But even then he told himself he was fine. He didn't need anyone. He didn't need her. The first fall. It started with a phone call. He was under the hood of a car when the mechanic handed him the phone. "Ethan, it's about your mother," the nurse said gently. She collapsed at work. By the time he reached the hospital, she was pale and weak, her smile trembling as she tried to reassure him. "I'm fine, honey," she whispered. "Just tired." But the doctor's eyes told him the truth: heart problems, exhaustion, too many years of double shifts. Ethan sat by her bed that night, holding her hand. The beeping of machines filled the silence. "Mom," he said softly, "once I make enough money you won't have to work anymore. I promise." She smiled weakly. "You've always had big dreams, Ethan. Just don't forget to live while chasing them." He didn't know it then, but those would be some of the last words she'd ever say to him. Losing everything. The next few months were a blur of hospital visits, bills, and sleepless nights. He picked up extra shifts, skipped meals, and sold his sketches for scraps of cash. He didn't have time to draw anymore. Every minute was survival. And then, one cold winter morning, she was gone. The house felt colder without her laughter. Her coffee mug sat by the sink, half full, as if she'd be back any minute. Ethan stood there for a long time, staring at the empty chair across the kitchen table. Then quietly he sat down and broke. For the first time in years he cried, not the silent kind but the raw, aching kind that leaves you gasping for air. There was no one to comfort him. No one to hold him. Just him and the echo of a promise he'd never get to keep. The struggle. Days turned into weeks. He stopped going to work. Stopped talking to friends, not that he had many left. The landlord started knocking. Bills piled up on the counter. One night, desperate, he opened his old sketchbook again. Dust fell from the pages but the drawings were still there, the library, the oak tree, her. He stared at the last one, Lena smiling beneath the golden sunlight, and something inside him snapped. He tore the page out and threw it into the trash. "I'm done dreaming," he whispered. "Dreams don't pay bills." But that was a lie. Because even as he said it, his hand reached for the pencil again. Almost as if some part of him refused to die. The turning point. Months passed. Ethan got a new job, a small tech repair shop in the city. The pay was terrible but it was something. One night, a customer came in, an old man whose laptop had crashed. Ethan fixed it for free. The man watched him closely and asked, "You ever think of building something of your own, kid?" Ethan shrugged. "I barely make enough to eat." The man chuckled. "So did I once. Then I started fixing things for others, and one day I started fixing my own life." He left Ethan a business card. It said only one thing. Every builder starts as a repairman. Ethan didn't understand it right away, but the words stayed with him. That night he sat by his small desk, opened his mother's old laptop, and started watching free coding tutorials online. He failed. Over and over. The screen flashed errors and frustration burned in his chest. But he kept going. Because what else was there left to lose? The rise from ashes. Winter turned to spring. Ethan spent every spare moment learning, fixing old computers for practice, designing small programs, selling repairs online. He started small, but with each success he felt something spark inside him again, the same fire he'd buried long ago. He still missed his mother. He still thought of Lena sometimes, especially on quiet nights when loneliness crept in. But the pain no longer controlled him. It fueled him. Pain has a strange way of reshaping us. It burns everything we once were, until all that's left is who we were meant to be. Years passed quietly. The slacker, who everyone wrote off, disappeared, replaced by a man who worked harder than anyone thought possible. And when his small repair service turned into a local tech business, and then into a registered company, Ethan finally looked in the mirror and saw something new. Not a slacker. Not a broken boy. But a survivor. He didn't know it yet, but destiny was already turning its wheel. Because while he was rising quietly from the ashes, somewhere far away, Lena's perfect world was beginning to crack. And soon, their paths would cross again. They called me a slacker once. But maybe I just needed to fall far enough. To learn how to climb. 5 years. That's how long it had been since Ethan walked out of that small town with nothing but a suitcase, a sketchbook, and a heart full of ghosts. The boy they once called the slacker was gone. In his place stood a man who had built something from nothing, and no one saw it coming. The man who came back different. He had spent years building his company, Eclipse Innovations, a tech startup that began in a cramped apartment and grew into one of the fastest rising firms in the city. Ethan became the kind of man people noticed when he walked into a room, confident, calm, his eyes sharper, quieter, older. But even with success he never forgot where he came from. The pain. The struggle. The faces that once looked at him with pity or disdain. He turned that pain into purpose. When the invitation came, a charity gala in his old hometown, honoring young entrepreneurs who gave back to their communities, Ethan almost ignored it. Almost. Until he saw the signature at the bottom. Lena Cho. The night of the gala. The night of the gala, the city glittered with lights. Inside the grand hall, music drifted softly, glasses clinked, and laughter floated through the air like perfume. Lena stood near the stage, radiant in a silver gown, her smile practiced but her eyes tired. She'd become the face of her family's foundation after university, beautiful, accomplished, but there was a weight in her gaze that no amount of glamour could hide. Ryan wasn't there. He hadn't been for a long time. Rumors said their picture-perfect relationship had ended in a messy, public breakup. Lena had changed too, softer around the edges, lonelier in her posture. Then the host's voice echoed through the hall. Please welcome our next guest speaker, founder and CEO of Eclipse Innovations, a company redefining modern tech. Mr. Ethan Evans. For a moment, Lena froze. She thought she misheard. But then she saw him, walking up the stage in a tailored black suit, calm, self-assured, with a quiet smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. And all Lena could do was stare. The moment of recognition. Ethan spoke with quiet power. He thanked the community for believing in small ideas, for giving dreamers a chance. But as he spoke, his eyes found hers in the crowd, just once. And when they did, she felt the air leave her lungs. The years melted away in that single glance. The boy from the library. The one who used to sketch the sunlight through the window. The one she left behind. He was standing before her now, but he wasn't that boy anymore. He was everything she'd once said she wanted, successful, driven, confident. And the realization hit her like thunder. She'd walked away from the very thing she'd been searching for all along. After his speech, people swarmed around him, investors, reporters, donors. But Lena stood still, watching him shake hands and smile with ease. When their eyes met again, he approached her slowly. Lena Cho, he said, voice smooth but distant. It's been, what, 5 years? She swallowed hard. 6. He nodded. You look well. She forced a smile. So do you? I almost didn't recognize you. Yeah, he said with a small laugh. I get that a lot. There was a pause, the kind filled with things unsaid. Lena broke it first. I heard about your company. You've done amazing things, Ethan. I'm proud of you. He looked at her then, really looked, but his eyes were unreadable. Funny, he said softly. You were one of the few people who didn't expect much from me. She flinched, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. That's not fair. Isn't it? He asked gently, but there was steel in his tone. You made your choice, Lena. And I made mine. The dance of distance. Later that night, while the band played a slow song, Ethan stood by the balcony watching the city lights. Lena joined him quietly. You know, she said, voice trembling slightly, I used to imagine what you'd become one day. But you're different. You've changed. He took a sip of his drink, eyes still on the skyline. People change when they have to. She hesitated. I didn't mean to hurt you back then. He turned to her, his voice low. But you did. For a moment, silence wrapped around them, heavy, raw, unspoken. Finally, he sighed and set his glass down. It's good to see you again, Lena. Truly. But let's not pretend we're the same people anymore. He gave her one last look, soft, distant, and walked away, leaving her alone on the balcony, the music echoing faintly behind her. Lena's heartbreak. That night, when the gala ended, Lena sat in her car and stared out the window for a long time. Her reflection looked unfamiliar, a woman who had everything but felt empty. And in her mind, his words replayed over and over. You made your choice, Lena. And I made mine. For the first time she realized what that meant. He had moved on. And she was still standing in the same place she left him. The golden boy she chose had faded. But the slacker she left behind had become everything she once dreamed of. And fate, cruel and poetic, made sure she'd see it with her own eyes. The gala was over, but Lena couldn't stop thinking about him. That night, she lay awake in her apartment, replaying every detail. His voice, his calm confidence, the way his eyes didn't linger on her like they used to. He was polite, distant. And that hurt more than anger ever could. For years, she had convinced herself that Ethan was a chapter closed. A sweet memory of a boy who never quite fit her world. But now, seeing what he had become, she realized how wrong she had been. The call she never thought she'd make. 3 days later she found his business email. She stared at the blank screen for almost an hour before typing just 3 words. "Can we talk?" She didn't expect him to reply. But the next morning her phone lit up. "Ethan, sure. Coffee?" Just like that. Simple. Casual. As if the years between them had been nothing more than a pause. The meeting. The cafe was quiet. One of those cozy places with warm lights and old music playing softly in the background. Ethan was already there when she arrived, sitting by the window, sleeves rolled up, a cup of black coffee in front of him. When she walked in he stood, always polite even now. "Lena," he greeted with a small nod. "Hey," she said softly, sliding into the seat across from him. "Thanks for meeting me." He smiled faintly. "I was curious." She laughed nervously. "Curious about what?" "About why someone who hasn't spoken to me in 6 years suddenly wants to." The words weren't sharp, but they cut all the same. The confession. She looked down, fingers twisting around her coffee cup. I owe you an apology, Ethan. For everything." He didn't say anything, so she continued. "When I left, I thought I was making the right choice. Ryan seemed like the safer future, the one my parents approved of, the one that made sense. But he wasn't you. He never was." Her voice trembled. "You believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. You saw me. And I." Her breath caught. "I threw that away." Silence stretched between them. Ethan stared at her, not coldly, not warmly, just quietly. Finally he spoke. "You don't owe me an apology, Lena. You made your choice. We both moved on." She shook her head, tears threatening. "No, you moved on." "I didn't." "Not really." The wound beneath the scar. He leaned back, studying her. There was pain in his eyes, but it wasn't raw anymore. It was healed, sealed over with time and hard lessons. "You know," he said softly, "there was a time I would have given anything to hear those words. To know you regretted it. But now, I'm not sure what to do with them." Her voice broke. "Do you still hate me?" Ethan looked down, his fingers tracing the rim of his cup. "I never hated you, Lena. I just stopped needing you." The honesty hit her like a blade, gentle but deep. The smile that broke her. She tried to smile through her tears. "You sound happy. Really happy." "I am," he said. "I built something for myself. I found peace in the work. And someone once told me that the best revenge is to live well. I guess they were right." She swallowed hard. "So there's someone else?" He hesitated for a moment before replying. "There's someone who makes life quieter. Easier." That silence after was deafening. Lena's chest tightened. She nodded, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm glad, Ethan. You deserve it." He looked at her, and for a brief second the old warmth flickered. Then it was gone. The moment she knew. When they left the cafe, she stood beside him in the sunlight, trying to memorize him. The calm strength, the kindness in his voice, the quiet dignity that came from heartbreak turned into wisdom. "I guess this is goodbye again," she said softly. He nodded. "Maybe. Or maybe just closure." She wanted to say something, to beg for another chance, to tell him she still dreamed of him, but his expression told her it was too late. He'd already forgiven her. And that forgiveness meant letting her go. As he walked away, she whispered under her breath. "I didn't choose the golden boy, Ethan. I just didn't believe the slacker could turn into gold." Tears slipped down her cheek, soft and silent. Because now she saw the truth, he always was gold. She had just been too blind to see it. Sometimes the worst punishment isn't anger. It's watching the person you hurt become everything you once dreamed of, and realizing they no longer need you in their story. A week passed after their cafe meeting, but Lena couldn't focus on anything. Everywhere she went, meetings, charity events, dinners, she saw him. The way he looked when he said, "I just stopped needing you." It echoed in her mind like a haunting refrain. And that night, when the rain began to fall, something inside her finally broke. The storm. The city lights shimmered through the downpour as Lena sat in her car, staring at her phone. Her finger hovered over his name, Ethan Evans. She typed, deleted, and retyped the same message for hours. Until finally she just hit call. It rang once, twice. Then, his voice. "Lena?" Her breath caught. "Ethan, can we talk? Please. Just once more." He hesitated. Then, "All right." "Where?" "The place where it all began." They met at the old Riverside Park, the same one they used to visit in college when they wanted to escape the world. It was quiet now, except for the sound of rain tapping softly on the river's surface. Ethan stood under the gazebo, hands in his pockets, his hair damp from the drizzle. When Lena arrived, clutching an umbrella, she froze for a second before walking toward him. "Thanks for coming," she said, voice trembling. He nodded. "You sounded different." She let out a shaky laugh. "That's because I'm scared." He frowned. "Scared of what?" "Of what you'll think after I tell you everything." The truth she never spoke. Lena took a deep breath. "When I left you for Ryan, it wasn't just about choosing him. It was about choosing the version of myself that everyone else wanted me to be." Her voice broke. "My parents thought you'd never make it. They said I needed someone stable, someone who could give me a future. And I was too weak to fight them. I let fear decide for me." Ethan's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. "I thought I'd find happiness with him," she continued, her eyes glistening. "But all I found was emptiness. He didn't love me, not really. He loved the image of me. And every time he looked at me, I realized I missed the way you used to." Her voice cracked. "I kept waiting for that emptiness to fade. It never did. And when everything fell apart, I realized it wasn't because of him. It was because I'd lost you." The rain grew heavier. Lena took a step closer. "I told myself you'd forgotten me. But when I saw you again, that night at the gala, it hit me. You didn't just survive, Ethan. You became someone extraordinary. And I'm proud of you. But it hurts knowing I'll never be part of that journey." The moment he breaks. For the first time, Ethan looked away. The words had hit something buried deep, the ache he thought he'd outgrown. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, controlled. "Do you know how long it took me to stop hating myself for not being enough for you?" Her tears fell freely now. "Ethan, I spent years thinking if I'd worked harder, been better, you would have stayed. But the truth is, I wasn't the one who failed us. You were." Lena's sob was small, broken. "I know. That's why I'm here. Not to ask for forgiveness. Just to tell you that you were right about everything. And I was wrong." He turned back to her, eyes searching her face. "Then why now, Lena? Why come back?" She hesitated, then whispered the words she'd buried for years. "Because I still love you." The confession. It came out like a breath she'd been holding forever. "I never stopped, Ethan. Not even when I tried to convince myself I had. I love you. I love who you were, who you are, and I hate that I only realized it when it was too late." She stepped closer, rain soaking through her dress. Her voice trembled. "I don't expect you to take me back. I just needed you to know. Because I can't keep pretending I don't feel this anymore." Ethan stared at her, rain dripping from his hair, his chest rising and falling. And for the first time, the wall in his eyes cracked. He saw her, not the girl who left, but the woman who finally saw what she'd lost. He reached out, brushed a tear from her cheek. "You're not the same girl I fell in love with," he said quietly. She nodded. "I know. And I'm not the same boy you left behind." A sad smile touched her lips. "I know that too." He hesitated, fingers still grazing her face, then slowly pulled away. The kiss that wasn't. For a heartbeat, it felt like the world paused, rain falling slower, air heavier, silence louder. They both leaned in, almost, until logic whispered between them. "It's too late." He stepped back. Her eyes closed, a tear mixing with the rain. The final words. "I'll always care about you, Lena," he said softly. "Maybe in another life we'd have made it work." She tried to smile, though her voice trembled. "Maybe in that life I'd be brave enough to choose you." He looked at her one last time, with tenderness, with sadness, with peace. Then walked away into the rain, leaving her standing alone beneath the sound of everything they never said. Sometimes love doesn't die. It just learns to live in silence. In the spaces between forgiveness and goodbye. 1 year later. The world had moved on. So had Ethan, or at least that's what he told himself. His company had grown even more successful, his name often appearing in magazines and interviews. People called him the visionary, the comeback story, the man who built gold from ashes. But behind every headline, there were quiet nights when he'd stare out at the city lights, thinking of her. Not with anger anymore, but with a kind of wistful peace. He'd forgiven her. But forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. The unexpected meeting. It happened on a spring afternoon. He was speaking at a youth entrepreneurship conference, mentoring young dreamers who reminded him of his old self. When the talk ended, the crowd began to disperse. That's when he heard a familiar voice behind him. "You still talk about believing in second chances." He turned, and there she was, Lena. Her hair a little shorter, her smile softer, her eyes less haunted. She looked lighter. "Lena," he said, surprised. "It's been a while." She nodded. "Almost a year." He smiled faintly. You keeping count? She laughed just a little. Maybe. The woman who changed. They walked outside together through a quiet garden near the venue. The air smelled of rain and new beginnings. I didn't expect to see you here, he admitted. I didn't plan to come, she said. But I've been volunteering with a youth startup foundation. They said you were speaking today and I thought, maybe it's time. He glanced at her. Time for what? She smiled sadly. To thank you. For inspiring me, even after everything. I used to think losing you was my punishment. But now I see it was my lesson. Ethan stayed silent, listening. I've spent this year rebuilding myself, she continued. Learning to be enough, without anyone's approval. Not my parents, not Ryan, not even you. Her voice softened. But I still miss you. Every day. The question that hung between them. They stopped by the old stone fountain. The sunlight danced on the water. He turned to her. Lena, what do you want from me? She met his eyes, steady, honest. Nothing you don't want to give. I just wanted to see if maybe there's still something left. Not what we had before. Something new. Something honest. He studied her face, the sincerity, the vulnerability, the absence of pride. This wasn't the same girl who once chose safety over love. This was a woman who'd finally learned what love costs. Ethan's choice. He exhaled, the weight of years softening his shoulders. I used to think closure meant walking away, he said quietly. But maybe it just means peace, no anger, no regret. She nodded. Peace sounds nice. It does, he said. Then after a long pause he added, maybe peace doesn't have to mean goodbye. Her breath hitched. Are you saying? He smiled, gentle but real. I don't know what this could be, Lena. But I'm willing to find out, if you are. The beginning after the ending. They stood there for a moment, two people who had once been broken by each other, now standing quietly in the same light. No promises. No grand gestures. Just the simple truth that sometimes time doesn't heal all wounds, it just teaches hearts how to beat differently. Lena took a slow step closer. Ethan didn't move away. The distance between them closed, not with a kiss but with understanding. And as the breeze carried the scent of spring through the garden, Lena whispered, maybe this time I'll choose differently. Ethan smiled softly. Maybe this time, we both will. They walked on, side by side, not back into the past but into a future they would build with clearer hearts. Love doesn't always return the way it left. Sometimes it comes back quieter, wiser. Not as a flame that burns, but as a light that guides you home.